It's Defender. So this came out in 2002, and it's just like I said, a modern take on the classic arcade game that came out, I guess, in the early 80s? There is a story here, and they have really tried to emphasize this story with an abundance of cutscenes and tons of text and lore and all kinds of other crap to flesh it out. Apparently, giant praying mantises are kidnapping everyone on Mars and destroying stuff and generally just like wreaking havoc everywhere. And their antics are like spreading throughout the solar system, and basically it's up to you to stop them. So you fly around like in Star Fox, but instead of being on rails, you're in these open 3D environments. And basically you're tasked with just performing these various objectives like escorting ships and destroying stuff and rescuing colonists and all those sort of things. And of course you earn points for completing these objectives that you use to upgrade your ship and buy extra lives between the missions. There are these temporary power-ups you can get that are scattered around the stage, and you're going to need them because there are a ton of freaking enemies everywhere in these stages. It's actually absolutely insane how many there are, and I feel like I would just kill them non-stop and they never stopped coming. I don't know if there's a set number of enemies per stage, but it sure doesn't feel like there are. It feels like they're just infinite. The game looks pretty good for a PS2 game, but it's nothing to write home about it, and it has that like dingy kind of gray and dark look to it. And on my CRT TV, which is pretty bright, it looked rather washed out, I have to say. I do like that there are a lot of different ships and different upgrades to unlock, but really, with the number of enemies that are floating around, I felt like it was better just to go with the ship that had the most defense, because you're being just bombarded non-stop with enemies flying around and shooting at you all the time. And speaking of like the tons of enemies, they all have like really annoying patterns. And they're so hard to hit unless you're using like a lock-on with homing missiles. And even then they take about like 2 or sometimes even 5 or more hits like directly to them to destroy them. And these are just basic enemies. These aren't like mid-bosses or anything like that, just your normal enemies. And I have to say, playing this game was really stressful for me. And the objectives I felt like just weren't that fun. Every stage it felt like had an escort mission, and everybody hates escort missions. Yeah, it's a cool idea to bring Defender into like 3D, but it got old really quickly. Even though I picked the ship that was like the burliest and strongest and had the most defense, it and even all the other ones felt really underpowered, and they really want you to like farm the same stages over and over and over again to get extra lives and upgrade your firepower. And the whole package just really isn't fun enough to warrant doing that. I made it about like 45 or 50% of the way through the game before I realized I just wasn't having fun, and it felt really grindy. I was trying to think of the best way to describe Defender on the PlayStation 2, and this is what popped into my head. And it was like, remember when you were a kid and you only had $20 to spend on a video game, and you're at a store and you're just browsing through all the games, just trying to find something that like looks halfway decent that you could afford? This is one of those games. This is the game you buy in that situation. Like, you got $20 left over from your birthday money. You just really want a new game because you've played all the same ones 50,000 times. And like, this looked okay. And it was $20. Like, that's what you got, right? So Defender on the PS2 is not a great game. Yeah, it's more advanced than the arcade game of Defender, but the arcade game of Defender is a lot more fun. Obviously, it's a classic for a reason. So this guy right here, he's a 5 out of 10. Pretty mediocre. I would not recommend it. This probably wasn't even worth like $20. 20 years ago, I paid probably $1 or $2 for it. And I'm not even sure it was worth that.